Today I'm not going to turn one bowl or two bowls. I'm going to turn three bowls. You're going to want to check this out. Hi, I'm Kent and welcome to Turn a Wood Bowl. Today I'm going to turn three small bowls that are going to be designed to stack one inside the other. Now, why would I do this? Well, I want to make a cool little gift for my granddaughter, and I think she'll have fun playing with these bowls. They're going to be kind of like small cups or bowls, and they're going to inner stack. I'm going to do a small one, a medium one, and a large one, and hopefully they line up and they look uniformed as if they all fit together. Now, I'm going to be turning quarter sawn wood. Quarter sawn wood is perfect for this because what happens is this is the side of a section. Now, quarter sawn typically comes out of a large piece of wood. This particular tree was about 24 inches in diameter, very large. And the center section, I cut a big slab right through the pith area. Now, the pith area, we want to disregard that and get rid of it. So what I did is I cut that away on the bandsaw, and that left me with this side. Well, that side is quarter sawn. What that means is all of the grain on that one side is going in one direction. It's kind of like they're all stacked up. Instead of using a small log where we have these big arches of grain, instead we have this side grain, and it's called quarter sawn. Now, what makes this nice is this wood has been drying for quite a while, but it still has moisture in it. But if it shrinks, it's essentially going to pull in from the sides just a little bit. Whereas if we use a smaller log with kind of that arching ring or grain pattern like I just mentioned, it's going to have the habit of really contracting and pulling up the sides and pushing out the ends, and it can really distort these bowls. Now, I'm doing this for fun. This is a kid's toy. It's probably going to get beaten up pretty good, so I'm not trying to make these perfect. So that's why doing these once turned with quarter sawn wood is perfect. They may distort, but it's going to be very minute and it's not even going to be perceivable, and my 2-year-old granddaughter probably won't mind. Also, I'm going to put these on the lathe and I'm going to do kind of like an assembly line. I'm going to go and process them, and I'm going to do all of their tenons first, and that's going to give me the ability to shape and size the exterior of the bowls, and then I'll flip them around and do the interiors, and hopefully we get a nice uniform look between the three. So I'm going to get this on the lathe and we're going to get started.
To keep this simple, I'm going to mount this between the centers. I'm going to be using a 4-spur drive center on the headstock, and I'm going to use my quill on the tailstock. I'm using my 1/2-inch 55-degree bevel swept back bowl gouge, and I'm going to use this to clean up each of the cylinders. Now, between the chainsaw and the bandsaw, none of these cylinders are that clean. So we're basically going to clean up the face first, and then we'll clean up the side of each of these cylinders and get them nice and smooth. And that's going to be the first process of this assembly line that we're going to be doing. Just going to take my time, make nice, clean 90-degree passes here, so I'm getting a really good clean cut side on this. And basically taking down the high spots and smoothing out these cylinders. Pretty basic technique, nothing fancy. You do want to remember to continuously tighten your tailstock while you're doing this, because the teeth on the drive center are going to tighten up, or loosen up rather, as the piece wobbles around and vibrates a bit. So you're going to want to tighten up your tailstock frequently when you're doing this, or at least check it and make sure it's not coming loose. Now I'm going to speed these up a little bit because I'm going to do the other 2 cylinders the same way, cleaning up the side and the face. Now I did the face or the side of that one first because I simply had the tool rest already in that position, just like I did there. I'm starting off with the face on that one, just trying to simplify. Now I'm going to use my dividers to mark the location for the tenon, and then I'm going to rough out the tenon and shoulder for each one of these cylinders. Again, using my 1/2-inch 55-degree bevel swept backed bowl gouge. Just going to take your time and make a nice clean pass for the depth of the tenon. And now I'm going to start working the shoulder here. Now I'm anticipating each one of these cylinders will be a little bit taller than what I need. I'm going to adjust them. It's going to be a little bit tricky because I want to get them to fit inside one another, and I also want them to have a continuous height as well. I'm using my spindle gouge there to shape the dovetail of each one. Now I'm going to bring each cylinder back up to the lathe, mount them in that mark that's already been made on the tailstock, and repeat the process, creating the tenon and the shoulder and dovetailing the tenon. So we're going to mark it, rough out the tenon and the shoulder, clean it up a bit, and then clean up that dovetail. Okay, so now we have 3 cylinders. I kind of need to look at these. This one's got like a crack on it, and that one, even though it's kind of larger, I'm probably going to turn that away and make that the smaller one so that that crack is removed. And then I'm going to mount these one at a time. Now I'm going to start with the largest bowl. Initially, I thought I might start with the smallest bowl and work my way out, but then I realized if I mess up and I start making them too big, my last blank might not be big enough. So it's probably going to make more sense to start with my largest and then make the medium and the small bowl at that point. So I'm going to shape the shoulder of this bowl, and the shoulder is going to become the foot of the bowl. So I'm going to use that and anticipate the height and the location of the foot of this bowl by using the shoulder as the foot. So I'm making a push cut into the headstock there, and then I'm making a push cut around the outer curve to start shaping the exterior of this bowl. Now this is interesting because, you know, as I like to say, the exterior of the bowl is the bowl. Well, that's definitely the case here because the exterior of this bowl will guide the interior of this bowl, which guides the exterior of the next bowl, and so on. So getting this shape just right, or the way I want it to be here initially, is pretty important. You want to take your time and make this shape work well. I'm using a push cut on the side of the foot there, and then I'm using a scraping cut, or scraping pulling cut, to shape that curve. And now I'm back up to the top. Now, you might be thinking this might not be a supported grain cut here, but actually because I'm 90 degrees to the end grain, I can either go left or right there, and it's technically going to be a supported grain cut. If you want to know more about supported grain cuts while you're turning, it's really important to understand which direction you need to be cutting to have a supported grain cut. You might want to check out this video. Now I'm using a shear scrape here to clean up this side, and now I'm going to actually use a scraping cut to determine the top edge of this particular bowl. I'm going to continue with the shear scrape. This is more of a scraping cut here. When you drop the handle, you get the shear scrape. I've got a video all on that too. You can check that out. I highly recommend checking out my YouTube channel as well as my website, turnawoodbowl.com. I have everything you need there to understand everything that we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to use the dividers to determine the width of this, and I'm going to transfer that to the tape measure, and it looks like it's about 12 centimeters. So that is going to be my starting point as far as my largest bowl. The outside of the largest bowl is 12 centimeters. I'm thinking I'm going to make the wall thickness of these bowls a 1/2 centimeter or 5 millimeters. And if that's the case, then that wall on the 12-inch or the 12 centimeter bowl is going to be about 11. The inside should be about 11 centimeters, which means I'm going to make the exterior of this bowl 10.5 centimeters, so that hopefully it will set down inside that. So I'm going to set the dividers to 10.5, and I'm going to just kind of eyeball that. Now remember, I didn't have to measure too much with that first bowl because that was the establishing bowl. I was using the largest blank I had, and I didn't remove too much material. I just want to remove enough to get the shape that I needed. This one, I'm going to need to remove more material so that I can get down to the ideal size, which is going to be a 10.5 centimeter diameter. So again, we want to take our time and really get this exterior shaped the way we want it. And in this case, it's going to be shaped and sized to match the previous bowl. So I'm getting that size down. Obviously, we need to remove this material. And I'm using, again, that scraping cut to flatten out the top of this bowl so that we have an idea where the top edge is. And that way I can make the diameter match as well. I can check here. I can see I'm still wide by several millimeters. So I'm going to remove some more material and get that down to our final thickness. Now I've sped up some of these secondary ones so you can see this in a little bit faster time. I'm going to sharpen my tool now. I'm not showing all my sharpenings. I'm sharpening this tool pretty frequently. I want to make sure I've got a good sharp edge on this as I'm turning, especially when I get down to the final passes for the exterior and for the interior. I'm going to stop, sharpen this tool up, and go make really nice clean cuts on those last few passes. I've got a course all about tool sharpening and shaping. If you want to learn how to shape a brand new bowl gouge to look like and to act like my 55-degree bevel swept back that you see here, then check out my tool sharpening course online. You could start that course right now if you're interested. Okay, so I used a push cut into the headstock to shape the side of the foot, and now I'm using a pulling scraping cut, and I'm dropping the handle, which makes this a shear scrape. Now think of the shear scrape as almost like shaving with a razor. It just takes off the lightest amount of material, and it doesn't tear out the ingrain fibers, which is fantastic. Now I've turned around and I'm making a push cut here to shape the curve of this bowl. We took the sides down pretty significantly there, so it was kind of a corner that was established. I want that to be a nice smooth flowing curve, and that's what I'm doing right here. And that is a supported grain cut going from the base up to the sides of the bowl. Still a little bit thick, so I'm going to take it down just a touch more. You can see I'm making a very light pass. I'm getting those little curlicues coming off as shavings. And I want this to be curved just a bit more, so I'm going to use a little more shear scrape. You can see the little fine shavings coming from this, that it's a very subtle adjustments. If you guys could do me a huge favor and click that like button if you're liking this video, I would greatly appreciate that. And go ahead and subscribe if you're not already subscribing. We're working our way up to 100,000 subscribers, which is pretty exciting. So a push cut, and then I can turn that immediately into a scraping cut because of the wings on this bowl. So I did a push cut up the side of the foot and then a scraping cut here to further shape the curves of the bottom of this bowl. And as I drop the handle, you can see I'm in about a 45-degree angle. That's what makes this a shear scrape. And again, if you go to my YouTube channel and search shear scrape, you'll see my video all about the shear scrape. It's a great technique for fine-tuning the exterior of a bowl like I'm doing here. All right, this is looking pretty good. This bowl is pretty much shaped. We're going to get this off the lathe, and I'm going to bring in our final blank. Here I'm lining up the drive chuck and then bringing the tailstock up. And what's great about the tailstock, it makes a nice little mark there. So I can line that up each time, and we're pretty much ready to go. So this was the large bowl at 12 centimeters. This is the medium bowl at 10.5 centimeters. So if I take off another 1.5 centimeters, I'm going to be at 9 centimeters. So that's going to be the goal for the exterior of this bowl, is 9 centimeters. So I'm speeding this up a bit because it's the same technique, essentially. Curving the bottom of the bowl and taking the size down, shaping it, checking that size. using the scraping cut, the push cut, and the shear scrape to get to the final shape for this bowl. It's getting close. I just need to fine tune it here with the shear scrape. All right, we have all three of them shaped as far as the exterior. Now I'm going to go ahead and put on my small 4-jaw chuck. This has dovetails, and the dovetails are very important to have really good gripping power on the tenon for a bowl, or on the mortise recess of a bowl as well. Now I'm pulling the tailstock up here for additional support, and I'm going to remove some material in the center of this bowl while I have the tailstock supporting me. I'm going to clean up that rim, and then I'm going to take my push cuts and I'm going to push them down into the center to remove a bit of that material. I can do this somewhat forcefully because I have the tailstock there, but because I'm pushing 90 degrees against the headstock, this is not a good direction to be making forceful cuts. If I didn't have the tailstock support there, there's a good chance I could break the tenon off if I push too hard on the side. What we really want to do are push cuts in towards the headstock like I'm doing right here. That's putting very little stress on the tenon. Okay, so we're done with the tailstock supports. We'll get that out of the way. Now I'm going to make the wall thickness of the bowls a 1/2 centimeter or 5 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that so I can see it. And then I'm going to continue removing material from the inside of this bowl while making the walls consistently a 1/2 centimeter wide. This technique's nice because I'm pretty much using that same push technique into the headstock. I'm pushing forward and removing material. I'm going to kind of inch my way up to the marked width of the wall, and now what I'm doing is I'm making the bevel on the nose of the bowl gouge parallel with the exterior of the wall. I'm looking straight down on the bowl gouge, and I'm making sure that it had the bevel is parallel with the exterior of the bowl. That way, as I proceed inside the bowl, I know that that gouge is cutting a parallel line that's going to make that wall thickness nice and even. So I'm going to remove some more material here on the inside. Now, if you notice, I'm not getting really aggressive with this. I'm taking off thin areas at a time. I'm not pushing hard. I don't want to cause stress for that tenon. So just work at the pace of your material. This is hickory. It's a very hard wood. And if I try to take a nice deep cut or deep pass, there's a chance it's going to start resisting and I might get a catch. And if I get a catch, or if I'm applying a lot of pressure, I could easily cause damage to the tenon or the shoulder, and that is something we don't want right now. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm working from the rim down. Now this one isn't so bad because this is a smaller bowl and I'm making the walls nice and thick. Working from the rim down is not super critical. We're not going to see a lot of vibration with these side walls because they are so thick and it's a relatively tight diameter. If this was a great big wide bowl, then even at this wall thickness, we probably would see some vibration on those walls, and I really wouldn't want to go back up to that rim. But because this is small and pretty durable, I'm not too afraid to go up those sides a little bit and clean them up. As you can see, I'm scooping out. I'm going back to the original thickness. I'm stopping occasionally and checking and make sure that wall is the same thickness all the way down. And then I just gently rub the bevel right here and pick up the cut and make it a very light cut. I know I need to remove more material at the bottom of this. So as you can see, the cut at the bottom of that curve starts to become a little bit deeper. And I check it here. It's feeling pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and remove this material in the center. And then I'm going to go ahead and make the final passes on this. Before I do that though, I'm going to use my calipers to check this and make sure that the wall thickness is as even as I'd like it to be. Now with a small bowl like this, it's not a bad idea to leave a little bit extra material in the bottom of the bowl to give it a little extra weight. But because this bowl has pretty thick walls, it's going to have a lot of weight in and of itself. If this were a really thin bowl, it's kind of a nice idea to put a little bit of extra thickness in the bottom. So I'm going to measure that. You can see the wall thickness is about 1/2 centimeter. It's becoming wider and wider as I go down, which is good. This is what you want, because that's indicating that you have more material to remove. So I'm just gently rubbing the bevel there and taking a little bit of material off the side. And as I go to the bottom of the bowl, I deepen the cut and take a little more material out. So what we're doing is we're sneaking up on the ideal wall thickness. If we get too aggressive here, or if we forget to stop and check those walls, we could easily make the walls too thin. And we obviously don't want that. We don't want thin walls down lower in the bowl. All right, it's looking pretty good. I'm going to check it one more time with the calipers. Yeah, it's looking good. I've got a little thickness in the bottom, so we're going to remove that. I'm going to make a really nice clean pass. You can see how thin those shavings are coming out. I'm making a really light pass that becomes a little more aggressive. You can see the shavings coming out a little bit thicker and wider. That's because I'm going a little bit deeper because the bottom has more material in it. Just taking my time here. So just lightly rub and make a very light cut, and then become a little bit deeper as we go into the bottom. I'm also turning the flute so that it's almost closed to the right, or the 3 o'clock position, so that it's make a nice slicing cut right through the center portion of the bottom of the bowl. Don't want to get aggressive there. Otherwise you'll pull out the fibers right in the center bottom of the bowl. We don't want that. All right, one last check. Now I'm going to give this a light sanding. I'm also going to round over the corners on the top of this. I want to have a nice rounded top edges. Now, of course, I'm going to have my little granddaughter is going to be playing with this, so I really don't want it having any sharp edges anywhere. Okay, I'm using this simple depth gauge that is a dowel rod and a stick with a rubber band holding it together to measure the depth of this, and it's about 6.5 centimeters deep in the center. You want to make sure that you put that dowel rod right in the middle of the bottom of the bowl and not up on one of the sides. But it's about 6.5 centimeters deep, and what I want is this bowl to stick out a little bit. So I'm going to make this a centimeter taller. So this is going to be 7.5 centimeters high. You guys might be wondering too why I'm using centimeters. I'm going to go ahead and scoop this bowl out pretty quickly again with the same 1/2 inch wall thickness. I got to tell you, when I started doing this channel, I have a lot of viewers all around the world, and most of them don't use inches. And so everybody was asking me about centimeters and what the size was in centimeters. So I kind of started learning it. I can't say that I've got it completely memorized, but it's actually pretty easy to use centimeters compared to inches and fractions of inches. And I know my fellow Americans are probably groaning, but it's actually pretty easy to use centimeters. And this is a perfect example of that. It's really convenient to do this in centimeters. So I'm going to round those edges off on the second bowl, do a little bit of sanding, and I'm going to measure the depth of this one because we're going to put the last bowl inside here. This one is about 6 centimeters deep. So I'm going to add a centimeter to that. So the next one will be 7 centimeters high. So we'll mark that 7 centimeters. And I'll just scribe a simple line on there. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut down to that height. And then remove the interior. That's going to clean up that rim nice and straight. And then we'll go ahead and mark that with the same 1/2 centimeter. I've got to get my terminology right if I'm going to use this. But it's actually really easy to use metric with woodworking. I didn't think it would be initially, but it's not bad. I've sped this up a little bit because it's basically the same exact technique. We're going to stop and measure those walls and make sure they're evenly thick going down. and make nice clean passes. And again, sneaking up on that final wall thickness. You want to keep checking it and just sneak up on it. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my larger 4-jaw chuck, and I'm going to use a jam chuck. I've got a video all about jam chucks. You're going to want to check that out when you get a chance. So I'm marking the interior diameter of each bowl. And I'm going to start with the largest. And then I'm basically making a simple shoulder. You want to make it a little wide, a little bit too big at first. And then I kind of I make slight angle cuts until it fits. And then I'll bring up the tailstock, and guess what? Everything is held in place right there. So I'm going to use the 1/2" 55-degree bevel swept back bowl gouge first to remove the tenon and start shaping the bottom of the foot of this bowl. And flatten out that foot. And then I also want this to be concave. I never like putting a completely flat foot on the bottom of the bowl, because if the wood does start to shift even a little bit, it's going to wobble. That bottom flat spot will not be flat for long. So by making it concave, instead we have a ring for a foot that is actually touching the table, and it's not a completely flat surface. So I'm switching to my spindle detail gouge to finish up this cut, but I'm continuing that concave curve in the middle bottom of the bowl. And I'll just lightly nibble away material here until I get this nub completely down to where I can cut it off. Now, you can see how little material I'm removing at one time. You do not want to get aggressive here. Also, by going slow, you can kind of sense if something's going wrong with that little nub, if it loses support. And you can just stop and then cut it off and sand it if you need to. But it's nice to be able to cut it with the tool. So I'm going to apply forward pressure and then turn the lathe off, and it cuts right through that material. So I just need to sand down that little bit of a nub there, and this bowl will be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to mark the interior of the next bowl, and I'm going to reshape the jam chuck. That's what's so cool about the jam chuck, is you can make it do whatever you want it, and you can completely customize it for whatever you're working on. So again, it's a little bit big at first, and sometimes it takes several tries to get this right. It can be a little bit frustrating, but you keep getting the size down until the piece will fit on there. And you can get it where it's completely snug and will almost stay on its own if you'd like. So I'm going to remove that tenon, shape the foot. I'm going to speed this up because you guys understand the process. And we've got that concave inside bottom of the foot, spindle detail gouge, apply pressure, and turn the lathe off, and boom. If only I could turn it that fast in real time, that would be great. There we go. There's the second one. So I'm going to measure the inside of the last one. And then we'll transfer that mark right up to the jam chuck. And then reshape the jam chuck again. And what's great, this jam chuck will sit on the shelf, and it's going to look weird because I just finished this project. And it's like, what were you doing with the jam chuck? It's like sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. But it doesn't matter because I can easily just take it, put it back on the lathe, reshape it to whatever I need for whichever project I'm working on. That's what's so nice about the jam chuck. So we'll finish up the exterior and the foot of the last bowl. And it's time for finish. You might be guessing that I'm going to use tried and true original finish, and you would be correct. And why would I do that? Well, guess what? It's food safe. And it's grandchild safe. Once this is cured, it's 100% non-toxic and is totally safe. It's basically made of just linseed oil and beeswax and nothing else. No chemicals added, no drying agents or metals added to it, nothing. So I'm applying a coat. I'm going to wait an hour and then remove that coat, and then I can burnish these and they'll be all set. And there they are, the 3 stacking bowls. This took a little longer than I thought, but it's actually really fun, and I can't wait for my granddaughter to play with these. And the hickory wood is absolutely gorgeous. Look at the wood grain. Gotta love it.
Well, here are the final bowls. I think they turned out really nice. They stack really well. It was a little bit tricky. There was a little bit more precision there than I imagined with measuring this and figuring out the height of it. When I started this, I wasn't quite sure exactly how I was going to do this. I initially thought I would start with the smallest and work up, but then I realized that I'm limited by how much space I have with that blank that I started with. So I might as well start with the largest one and work down. I could always remove it and make it smaller. If I needed to make a bigger one at the end, it would have been tricky. So working from large to small seemed to work. And finishing the large one and then understanding how deep it was inside also helped me set the height for each of the next ones, which seemed to work out pretty well. Now, there's obviously a number of different ways you could do this. I was thinking about doing a template for each one of these, but I figured that would be a little too complicated and it's going to require a lot of fussing and trying to match up the template, but you could do that as well. There's all sorts of different ways you could do this. The cool thing about these is they can stack up backwards as well, so you can make a tower with them. And the little foot on the bottom helps hold the one on top in place. So they can stack up straight or they can lean a little bit, which is actually kind of fun. Kind of makes me want to do a big stack of bowls that can be a tower of some sort, a movable tower. It could be kind of fun. So I'm hoping my granddaughter enjoys this. Let me know if you guys like this. If you like this video, do me a huge favor and click that like button. Also, let me know if you're going to make a project like this where you do consecutive bowls that nest inside one another. Let me know if you're going to do a project like that. Leave me a comment below and let me know all about it. Or maybe you've already done this and you did it in a different way. If you did, let me know in a comment below. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to check out my website, turnawoodbowl.com. Over there, I've got everything you need to learn how to turn wood bowls, including online courses. So check it out, turnawoodbowl.com. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy turning.
Ella sits in the bowl. Ella.
Is that the little one?
No.
Good job.
Sweet.